Hello everyone, welcome to week 5 lecture videos once again. In this video, I will start discussing loan portfolio credit risk and also concentration risk. I will be covering chapter 11. The models of measuring credit risk associated with individual loan discussed in the previous chapter describe alternative ways by which a financial institution's manager can measure the default risk on individual debt instruments such as loans and bonds. Rather than looking at credit risk of one loan at a time, the focus of this chapter is to provide financial institutions managers with techniques to measure credit risk in a loan portfolio context and to recognize the benefits from loan portfolio diversification. The risk-return characteristics of each loan in the portfolio are a concern for financial institutions, but the risk return of the overall loan portfolio with some of the risk of the individual loan diversified affects the financial institution's overall credit risk exposure. So just to remind you that in the last chapter, we talked about individual loan credit risk, and in this chapter, we will be concentrating on portfolio credit risk. So this is an overview of this chapter. We will be talking about simple models for loan concentration risk. We will be discussing portfolio model and also risk analytics models. So first of all, simple models of loan concentration. Financial institutions widely employ two simple models of measuring credit risk concentration in the loan portfolio beyond the purely subjective model that we have already lent too much to this borrower. The first is migration analysis. In migration analysis, lending officers track Standard & Poor's, Moody's, Fitch ratings, or their own internal credit ratings of certain pools of loans or certain sectors, such as real estate loans. If the credit rating of a number of firms in a sector or rating class decline faster than has been historically experienced, financial institutions will curtail lending to that sector or that class. Okay, so a loan migration matrix, or it's also known as a transition matrix, seeks to reflect the historic experience of a pool of loan in terms of their credit rating migration over time. As such, it can be used as a benchmark against which the credit migration pattern of any new pool of loans can be compared. So if you look at this table shows a hypothetical credit migration matrix or table in which loans are graded into 3 rating classes. You can see class 1, 2, 3. The rows in this table list the grades at which the portfolio of loans begin the year, and the columns list the grades at which the portfolio ended the year. The numbers in the table are called transition probabilities, reflecting the average experience or proportion of loans that began the year, say in grade 2, remaining grade 2 at the end of the year, being upgraded to a 1 or being downgraded to a 3 or defaulting D. For example, for loans that began the year at rating 2, 83% of these loans end the year in rating 2, 12% of them upgrade to rating 1, and 3% of them downgrade to rating 3, and 2% of them default. Okay. Now, if financial institutions manager finds that at a certain point in time, the more of these rated bonds are downgrading or their credit rating is declining. For example, 3% of these bonds actually end year with a lower credit rating. Now, if they suddenly finds that about 10% of these bonds are downgraded, then a financial institutions manager will take away the fund or take away the resources from that sector where the bonds are downgraded at the end of the year, and will take away the fund from this sector and will invest in other sector. Okay, that is loan migration matrix. The second simple model requires management to set some external limit on the maximum amount of loans that will be made to an individual borrower or sector. Okay, this is known as concentration limit. The financial institutions determine concentration limits on the proportion of the loan portfolio that can go to any single customer by assessing the borrower's current portfolio, its operating unit's business plan, its economic projection, and its strategic plans, and so on. Typically, financial institutions set concentration limits to reduce exposure to certain industries and increase exposure to others. When two industry groups' performances are highly correlated and financial institutions set an aggregate limit of less than the sum of the two individual industry limits. The financial institutions also typically set geographic limits. They may set aggregate portfolio limits or combination of industry and geographic limits. Okay, bank regulators also limit loan concentration to individual borrower to a maximum of 10% of a bank capital in Australia. Okay, the Basel II framework recognizes that this is an issue of granularity, meaning that if banks hold relatively large exposure to an individual borrower or sector relative to a reference portfolio they have devised, then risk weighting required in the capital to be held will be adjusted up or down to reflect the levels of portfolio concentration or diversification. So concentration limit is calculated using this simple formula: maximum loss as a percentage of capital, then multiplied by 1 divided by loss rate. So look at this example. Management caps losses at 15% of financial institutions' capital to a particular sector and estimates that amount lost per dollar of defaulted loan in the sector is 40 cents. Does the maximum loan to a single sector as a percentage of capital, that means the concentration limit, will be a maximum loss as a percentage of capital into 1 by loss rate, which will be 37.5%. So once again, I repeat that the management cap losses at 50% of financial institutions' capital. So which means that the sector we are talking about is the financial institution can afford maximum 15% of the losses in that particular sector, 15% of its capital in that particular sector, and loss rate is 40%, which means that if a loan is defaulted in that sector, then 40 cents will be lost for every $1 of defaulted loan. For example, if $1 is defaulted, 40 cents will be lost, means 60 cents is recoverable. And in that case, we can calculate concentration limit is 37.5%. So which means that the maximum loan that a bank can grant to this particular sector will be 37.5% of its capital. So that's the end of our discussion on simple model of loan concentration risk. In the next video, we will be talking about portfolio theory associated with loan concentration. Thank you very much.